Hello family, it is Odera, your trusted chef, and today I'm going to be showing you guys cheesy zucchini with beef. This was one of the earlier recipes, you know, it's not as fancy, shall I say. This was at a time when I felt like if there was a vegetable involved, then it was good enough to go. But it's not bad. It's definitely not bad. I think the reason why I look down on it in retrospect is because it uses so much cheese. But cheese in and of itself isn't necessarily bad. If you use it in moderation, you don't, eat it every day or something. Like, I don't know, it's not that bad. When you actually look at the nutrition facts, it offers a lot of protein and I think calcium too. So there's that, but I will say if you are lactose intolerant or you just don't eat cheese for whatever reason, this dish does taste good without the cheese. It can really stand alone without the cheese. So give it a go if you're interested, if you're curious. Otherwise, let's get into what you'll need to make this dish. First, you're gonna need 1 zucchini. You're gonna need garlic salt, half a pound of ground beef, 2 cans of tomato sauce, and some mozzarella. I think 1 cup. You're also going to need a cutting board and a knife, a pan to cook everything in, and a 1/4 teaspoon measuring spoon, and a measuring cup. I think you'll just need 1 cup, like the full cup. Anyway, we're just gonna get into cutting this zucchini. Definitely not a hard vegetable to cut. It's relatively soft, I would say, and not that large. So I think what I'm gonna do is cut it lengthwise first in 2 directions, and then just kind of slice it from there so that it comes out diced. That's typically how I like to cut vegetables. Like, I like to have them come out in small chunks, but at the same time, when I made this recipe, well, I technically didn't make it. When my mom made this recipe without cheese, she sliced the zucchini instead of dicing it, and I think that actually made it a better dish. I know most people think this sort of thing doesn't matter, but I think it just made it a more interesting dish without the cheese there. For some reason, I feel like the dicing with the cheese, like when you do dice the zucchini, it kind of is a bit harder to like eat, Sorry, when you slice the zucchini, it's a bit harder to eat. But I felt like dicing it just made it more visually appealing. So if that's something you're into, maybe you can do half-moon slices instead of full moon slices. Otherwise, you can dice it as you see me doing here, ever so slowly. You want to make sure that you do not cut yourself. I think I've only cut myself once or twice in my several years of cooking. I can honestly say I've been cooking for over a decade now, and I can't really remember the last time I cut myself. I'm just assuming that it must have happened once or twice. It must have happened once or twice. Anyway, if you have any like semi-big pieces, you can chop them down. I don't know why I'm chopping those ones. They're really not that big. But anyway, now that we have our zucchini all chopped up, we are going to head to the stove and get cooking on the pan. So here we have our pan in front of us, and we're just gonna go straight into cooking the ground beef. As you know, if you're a frequent visitor of this channel, a loyal subscriber, you'll know that I don't really cook every meat with oil because I just don't really feel like it's necessary. If the meat itself has a lot of fat, I don't necessarily think it's necessary. I don't think it's necessary to cook it with oil. I just like to, limit the amount of calories that I'm cooking with if and when possible. If you don't care, you can add the oil. No judgment here. But I'm using a lean beef. I would never, just for the record, I would never suggest going extra lean with the beef. It's not worth it. It's just not, or with turkey, with beef or turkey, do not go too lean. This type of leanness is just good enough, okay? And maybe you even, since we're not adding oil, you might even want to add a bit more, you might want to use a less lean cut of beef. But again, if you're into counting calories, wow, it's so jumbly today. If you're into counting calories, then this sort of lean beef without oil is good enough. Because it doesn't tend to burn when you're using a non-stick pan, and I'm sure even if you cooked a leaner beef without oil, it still wouldn't burn because it's a non-stick pan. But I'm just trying to explain what I'm doing, because I think most people cook all their meat in oil, and that makes a lot of sense. It makes it easier to cook. It also enriches the flavor. But there's a method to my madness, okay? Now, don't leave that salt on the pan too long. Crumble the beef ASAP. Make sure that you get the salt incorporated into all parts of the beef. That's pretty much the only seasoning for this meat and for this dish as a whole. I really try to let all the ingredients shine on their own, and I kind of try to limit my seasonings and just use them strategically, you know? So here we're going into crumbling the beef. We're trying to get it to get fully browned. So I usually just do this with a fork and knife, and I just kind of go in and keep going back in to get it really, really crumbly. I don't want any super large chunks, you know. And this can take a bit of time. As you can see, there is water coming out of the beef. I don't know if it's water or fat. It's probably fat. But there are some juices coming out of the beef so that the beef doesn't burn. But yeah, at this point we're just crumbling the beef. That's really it. So we could just fast forward. I'm sure you guys get the gist of what's happening here. Okay, now that the beef is totally cooked and browned, we're going to add the zucchini. Now we're not going to add any additional seasoning because the garlic salt that we added while cooking the beef should be able to hold over the zucchini and pretty much the rest of the dish. The cheese will also add its own salt. So for this step, you really want to cook the zucchini to your desired level of doneness. As you probably know or may have guessed, zucchini can be eaten raw, so you don't even have to cook it at all, you know? Actually, you can just stop the recipe right here, add the rest of the ingredients, and just stop cooking, but I'm sure most of us would like to cook some of these ingredients further. So I like my vegetables and pretty much everything I eat to be very, very tender and soft. So I'm probably going to cook this for a while, but I also am keeping in mind that when we add the tomato sauce, it will cook further. And I have this whole theory about like having things cook together and infuse flavors into one another. I don't think it's that far-fetched. I think that's a well-known concept. But yeah, so I did cook it a little bit, but I didn't cook it all the way because I wanted to give it some time to cook with the tomato sauce. So I just added 1 can. Now I'm going to add the 2nd can. And like I said, we're just cooking for as long as we feel like. We're just trying to get all the flavors to merge together. I will say, for those of you who are curious, we're not using like tomato puree, we're using tomato sauce, and that does come with its own seasoning. It's usually nothing significant, just, you know, a little bit of garlic, a little bit of onion. I think that's kind of it. So don't feel the need to add too much salt or, you know, anything else. I do think, one thing I didn't mention in the beginning, I do think this recipe could use, you know, a dash of oregano. I just love how oregano smells. But yeah, so now you just want to mix things around, make sure everything is really coated in this tomato sauce, and just cook for as long as you want. I wouldn't cook too long, but that's just me. Do what makes you feel happy. It is your dish at the end of the day, and you're the one who's gonna have to eat it. Once you think that you're kind of done cooking, and I don't know however you'll figure that out, one thing that I also like to do with this dish is kind of reduce the sauce into something a bit thicker. And reducing and cooking just means like evaporating water. This is kind of around how I like it. You can see the bubbles kind of forming above a layer of thickness. So I just taste tested one of the zucchini chunks, and I'm pretty sure I liked what I tasted. So I'm gonna turn off the heat, and this is how it kind of cools down. It cools down pretty thick. Before it completely cools down, you want to add your mozzarella. So we're gonna add a full cup of mozzarella, and this is where I kind of feel like the dish, you know, kind of takes a turn. I just don't know how to feel about this, because once we mix it up, you'll realize this is a lot of mozzarella. This is very cheesy. Now, I will say, my brother loved this. Listen, he loved this dish. I didn't. I didn't dislike it. I don't know. I just felt like it was so much cheese. I feel like it was so much cheese. The tomatoes in my face. Like, I don't know. Like, this isn't a bad dish. And every time I make it, I'm surprised at how good it is. Because I think I have this perception of it being less good than it actually is, if that makes sense. But listen, my brother loved it. You might love this as well. You know, comment down below if you think this is too much cheese. I'm trying to think of a meal or recipe that I can kind of relate this to. And I know some of you guys will cringe because I am putting this in the Italian section just because I use tomato sauce and cheese. I'm sorry, I don't know. That's what Italian food is to me, just tomatoes and cheese. But anyway, here's the finished result. I put it in a nice little bowl. I sprinkled it with a little bit of Parmesan, or maybe that is mozzarella. I think that's Parmesan that I sprinkled it with. And if you do want to, you know, mix things up, you could have done 3/4 cups of mozzarella and 1/4 cup of Parmesan. That also would have been very nice, very zesty. Anyway, I think this looks really nice. Maybe this kind of reminds me of like ravioli almost. Maybe not. Anyway, I hope you like it. Comment down below what you think. Here's the price per meal breakdown. Here are the nutrition facts. I hope you're having a lovely day. And yeah, like if you like the video, comment, share, subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!